Welcome to Event Horizon, a walk down the paranormal with a splash of the conspiracy. I am Mark Anthony Peterson and I am your host. In today's topic, we're going to talk about reoccurring dreams, the Akashic records, and downloading the new reality. How many of you out there have reoccurring dreams? You know, that same dream over and over and over again. Well, according to some experts, each person spends about 90 minutes per night in REM sleep. That's that deep sleep that lets you dream. Reach that subconscious level where you explore the issues that your mind cannot resolve. Now, many experts say that reoccurring dreams are ways of you dealing with suppressed or unresolved conflicts. Now, the ancient Chinese believed that your spirit was responsible for your dreams and that you were able to travel as that spirit being into other dimensions. Yeah, Dr. Strange, that's where that came from. My first reoccurring dream was about my uncle, my late uncle. He was a gifted mind that was skipped ahead 2 grades by the time he reached the 7th grade. My grandmother told me that she thought he might graduate from high school by the time he was 13. One day on the farm, he was playing near the bend where the horses were and got kicked in the head. Over the next 5 years, his mental capacity degenerated greatly. He had glimpses of brilliance, but mostly he started to degenerate into a person that would play the guitar and have a few select phrases that he would repeat over and over. He loved playing the guitar and he would make up his own songs. The favorite was Tornado. And he would play that guitar and just repeat that phrase over and over again until, like my grandmother, who was half Native American, would say, he's going to conjure up rain and eventually bring a tornado. And when one eventually hit the town, I couldn't help but think that my uncle had something to do with that. He would play it on the front porch. He would play it in the woods. All the kids in the neighborhood knew him and knew of his prowess with the guitar. One thing would set him off, though. If you attempted to sing that song, Tornado, and make fun of him doing it. And little kids in the neighborhood would do that, and he would burst out of the house onto the porch and would chase them for blocks, catching one every now and then and spanking them as hard as he could before my grandmother could get there and break it up. I witnessed this on several occasions as a small child, and it must have terrified me to death because that became my reoccurring dream. Him rushing off the front porch to chase me across the street and onto the playground, which was adjacent to my grandmother's house, towards the schoolhouse, which was approximately 2 football fields lengths away from my grandmother's front porch. I would run in panic only to feel like I was in molasses as he pursued me with an angry scowl, looking to give me a spanking, even though I had not made fun of him. That dream reoccurred for many years until the day I turned and started to fly. As I flew away from him and into the clouds, I seemed to lose all angst about being around my uncle. And from that moment forward, he and I developed a very good relationship. So I could agree with experts in that regard that maybe there was some repressed fear that made me have that dream over and over again. But I can't quite explain the reoccurring dream that I've been having since I started doing yoga. This dream is absolutely nuts. I go to sleep. I see the room perfectly as it exists. I get up out of the bed and walk into the bathroom ready to poo. Except there's a guy in the bathroom that looks just like Lurch. When I see Lurch, I know immediately it's a dream, but I can't help talking to him. I turn to Lurch and I say, "Lurch, is this a dream?" And he will nod yes. He never speaks. Like Lurch, he's about 6'8", 6'9", maybe even 7 feet tall. I say, "Am I about to poo on myself in the bed?" Again, he responds with just a nod. I say, "Should I wake up and go use the bathroom?" And he responds again. I've had this dream 24 times. Same scenario, same Lurch. Don't know what the experts say about that, other than you must be getting a lot of fiber, or the yoga's really unclogging you. But that's a funny dream. But I've also had dreams where I feel like I'm being upgraded, where knowledge has been downloaded directly into my brain. And as I started to think about this, I found that there are others who have perfected this, and it may be the source of their genius. And so it has led me to ask, what are dreams? Why do we have them? Are dreams the bridge that allows us to connect, like the old-fashioned modems, to the Akashic records and give us ability to tap into that knowledge well? And much like those old 9 bits per second connections, siphon off just small bits of knowledge that help us solve the problems that we're looking to deal with in our everyday life. It stands to reason that everything that can be done has already been done. We're in an infinite universe. It also stands to reason that because energy cannot be destroyed, only converted, that somewhere in this vast universe, every answer exists in some form of energy. Just needs to be tapped into, converted, and downloaded. It also seems to reason that if particles are connected across space and time and can dance together in movement over that same distance, i.e. string theory, that this knowledge can be shared with any entity, any conscious entity anywhere in the universe. And just maybe, dreams are the platform or the construct for downloading software and upgrading our physical brains. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, I've mentioned him before. He moved to Selma, Alabama in 1912 and stayed there to 1923. For those of you who don't know Edgar Cayce, he, as I mentioned, is the sleeping prophet, a guy who would literally go into a trance, a dreamlike state where he could discover answers to any problem put in front of him. He could read your past lives. He could diagnose medical issues and prescribe cures that would later become the standard in modern medicine. All from that trance-like state. He was able to obtain virtually an unlimited amount of knowledge on an unlimited number of subjects. Cayce believed that dreams are journeys into the spirit world. Sound familiar? Very similar to what the ancient Chinese believed, that the soul was the key to driving the dreams and the connection to the subconscious world, to the spirit world. Now, according to Harmon Bro, in a book entitled Cayce on Dreams, he says of Cayce, "There's not a question we can ask which cannot be answered from the depths of our inner consciousness when the proper attunement is made." So when you are able to turn the frequency to the right spot on the dial, you can pick up the channel that gives you access to the information. And apparently, based on what Cayce's saying, that frequency that you have to find is somewhere in your dreams. In that dream state where you are able to open up your consciousness and allow this knowledge to flow in. Cayce also believed that if you could tap into this state, this frequency, this construct, it connected you to every other conscious being in the universe, giving you access to all knowledge that ever existed. The most super of supercomputers. Some people think the greatest geniuses to exist perfected this ability to tap into that consciousness. to create a lucid state where they could exist on that plane and absorb large amounts of knowledge that exist on this planet and throughout the universe. Tesla was believed to be one of those people. Nikola Tesla. It was believed that he was capable of controlling his lucid dreams and essentially forcing a reoccurring dream in order to perfect technology and scientific concepts. As Tesla described, he could take apart a motor or a magnet in his head and do virtual experiments on that motor or magnet and rotate it as if it were a digital virtual representation. Put it back together, retest, and repeat until the motor or magnet was functioning in his brain before he even started building. And he could go back and repeat that same experiment over and over again in order to build on the concepts. He had perfected that lucid state, that perfect point on the dial where the channel comes in the most clear and the knowledge flowed at its greatest rate. Tesla is known for some incredible inventions. The radio, alternating current, many of what drives all of the robotics that we have today. All built around his ability to master these dream experiments. Einstein was another who people believed could master this lucid dream state and recreate it in order to master scientific concepts. Because as Einstein is quoted as saying, reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. He understood that reality is a collective, conscious recognition of the energy and vibrations that we interpret as individuals. And that if you can master a state that gives you access to more dimensions, you have access to more knowledge. Salvador Dali, the great artist, used techniques to pre-program his dreams. So like in the Matrix, where you have the construct and you get all the tools you need and push those into the Matrix, Salvador Dali was capable of doing that for his dreams, to inspire him to create the art that he produced. How about this one? I got this from the guys at Grimerica in episode 299. You need to check this out. They spoke to Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, who suffered a couple of different maladies after he created the cartoon. One that limited his ability to draw cartoons, and the other that limited his ability to speak. Now, one of the things that Scott had been trained on prior to becoming a prominent artist and cartoonist was hypnosis. And he used that training to help rewire his brain to give his ability back to draw and talk. And that's literally how he described it. Doctors had looked for many different physical connections to his ailments, only to conclude that it was a mental block. And when he attempted to draw with his left hand, just the recognition of him drawing made his right hand repeat the same spasms that he had had when he attempted to draw with that hand. Once he knew that, he began using different techniques and even technology to trick his brain into not thinking about drawing cartoons. Eventually ending up with a pad and a stylus and drawing the cartoons digitally on that pad. Ahead of his time, before these were widely used by cartoonists, but his brain didn't recognize that as the same action as using a pencil and drawing on paper. And so the spasms did not return. He did all of that in a hypnotic state and brought that into his reality. So all of that leads me to the point of thinking that genius is obtainable by everyone on the planet once you're able to lock in on that frequency, on that dial that downloads the knowledge that lets you solve problems. But it's not that easy. I'm going to tell you my two serious reoccurring dreams. One, when I was a young preteen, 7 or 8 years old, and the other I still continue to have to this day. My father and mother brought my brothers and sisters and I all bikes one Christmas as presents. Father stayed up all night putting them all together because my mom had ordered them from a catalog, Sears catalog, and they came in boxes and had to be assembled. My father successfully assembled all the bikes, except when he got to mine, he accidentally stripped the threading on the pedals and could not connect the pedals to the bike. They wouldn't stay on. The threading had been stripped, and so every time I put the pedals on, immediately when I put my foot on and applied pressure, they just fell out. In the afternoon of that cool Christmas morning, my father took out his welding torch and attempted to put a bead on that pedal to hold it onto the bike, thinking that that would be enough to keep it from falling off as I rode. It just came right back off after a few pedals. So I had to park the bike while all the other kids, including my brothers and sisters, rode their bikes and enjoyed Christmas morning by being all over the neighborhood with their new toys. I can't say I was devastated, more so than perplexed. I wanted a solution to that problem. I wanted pedals that would stay on, or that had the threads that would fit, connect, and give the grip that's needed for me able to pedal and brake. Because the braking mechanism on those old bikes was to push backwards on the pedal, locking the back wheel. So you needed it for as much as propulsion as you did for braking. That night was the first of a series of reoccurring dreams where I was able to see that bike in 3 dimensions. From every angle and every aspect. Much like what you saw in the Matrix, where the officer comes up to one of the agents and says, "Jurisdiction, I just sent 2 troops up to get that young lady." And the agent responds, "No, officer, they're already dead." And they cut to the scene of Trinity jumping into the air, and then the camera rotates 360 degrees around her. That's what my brain did to the bike, looking for a solution to the broken pedals. No solution the first night. Just observation of the bike itself. The next night, the same thing happened. Except this time, I was on the bike. I could see myself on the bike. And the camera, again, was zooming around in a 360-degree perspective, watching me pedal the bike without pedals. I had placed my feet on top of the metal that the pedals connect to and was pushing it straight down, hard enough for it to kick back up on the other side, where I could press down and repeat the sequence left to right. Like a drone, I was moving around the entire motion, watching just my feet movement on the bike. As I got closer, it felt like the muscle movements in the dream were transferring to me physically. Maybe I was moving my feet in bed as I dreamed the dream that I'm describing. All I know is the next morning I unchained my bike, jumped on, and rode it faster than any kid who had pedals. Somehow, that knowledge of how to ride it without pedals was transferred into me and into my physical being. The second reoccurring dream is one that I continue to have. And it's one where I'm in a classroom setting and it's just me and one instructor. It feels like I'm back at my alma mater, but I've never been in a room quite like this one. There's a window with light. It feels like it's about 3:30, 4 o'clock on a summer day. There's a single chalkboard, and the instructor is as tall as Lurch. Female, but each time I look down and look up, the face of the female changes. Clothing, everything else stays the same. It's just a different face, different ethnicity, different person each time. Same voice, never misses a beat on the information that she's providing. My first lesson with this entity was one where she was trying to teach me how to move the mug I had left on my nightstand next to my bed. With my mind. I said, that's impossible. I can't move the mug that's on my nightstand. She said, you can't move the mug on your nightstand, but you can move the mug that's in your mind. And if you can move the mug that's in your mind, you can move the mug on your nightstand. I listened, and then she said, all you have to do is recreate your bedroom exactly as it is in your mind, right down to the mug. And then she instructed me to do it. I couldn't do it because I could not maintain that focus. I don't know how many of you have ever tried to do this. I try to do it when I go to yoga. When I start my warm-up, I'll lay on the mat, look at the ceiling fan above me, take a mental picture of it in my mind and try to see how long I can maintain that picture as perfect as it is before it distorts and disappears. I count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, trying to hold the image in my mind without distraction before it disappears. You do that long enough and your brain starts to hurt. So I'm in the dream and she's telling me to recreate an entire room in every detail, down to the mug next to me. When I can't do it, the being walks over and places an index finger on my forehead, and suddenly the room is there. Every detail. The being then says, okay, that's step 1. I helped you, but you're going to have to be able to do that on your own. Now, I want you to feel everything in the room until you can feel its vibrations. And I initially could not quite comprehend, but she said, you created this room. This is your room in your mind. You should know the vibrations of everything in this room. So start with the mug. Feel the mug in your mind and feel how it vibrates. How does it move? How does it feel? How is that different from the nightstand that it's sitting on? She pressed a little harder on my forehead, and suddenly the mug felt like it was in the back of my head, like it was a part of me. She said, "Can you feel the mug now?" I affirmed that I could. She said, "Can you break the mug apart because you can shake it enough to break it in your mind?" I affirmed again that I could. She said, "Now move that mug that's in your mind inside of the mug that's on your nightstand. And if you can feel the mug in your mind, you can feel the mug that's on your nightstand. Because one's inside the other." I moved the mug out of my mental plane into the mug on my nightstand. The moment at which it was in the nightstand, on the nightstand mug, my brain felt like it was on fire. Like it was firecrackers going off in every direction. Pop on one side, pop on the other. But I could feel the mug on the nightstand. I could feel it shake and tremble as if it were talking to me. When the being said, "Move the mug," the mug felt like a ton of bricks. I could feel underneath it. I could feel around it. I could feel inside of it. I could feel it shake and tremble. I could not move it, slide it, or lift it. It was as if it were as heavy as the Empire State Building. I turned, looked back at the being, and suddenly we were back in the classroom. And before I could ask the next question, I was awake, wondering what had happened. I returned to the classroom not much long after the first dream, where all she did was lecture about life and the equation and the balance. And she began to draw symbols, mathematics symbols, onto the chalkboard. Though it didn't feel like she was writing on the chalkboard, it felt like she was writing directly into my brain with each chalk movement on the board. She continued to write out this long equation that described life. And how the equation was self-balancing. I've never felt more energy than when she was writing that equation. And I felt weird energy in the past. The dark man that I've described in previous podcasts. An impossible amount of energy around him. He paled in comparison to this equation. All I can remember is that she finished the equation, and when she finished, it felt like love on the board. Overwhelming. I woke up immediately because I could not contain the joy. But I immediately came down from that joy because I hadn't retained any of the equation. But I know it exists. These sessions have continued. Different topics, different discussions. And it all leads me to wonder if these are, as the experts say, me dealing with some unresolved, suppressed issue from my physical reality, or are there states where we can all tap into what the universe is broadcasting? Maybe that's what they mean when they say pray. Maybe they don't mean just say words. They mean induce a lucid state so you can hear what the universe is actually telling you. Edgar Cayce, who was known to interpret people's dreams, often repeated that to people. Pray and dream. And when you dream, the answers will come to you. Case after case with Cayce where he helped people see that some of the information imparted to them were attempts at connecting the dots to solve real world problems. But I think somehow we've gotten away from what real prayer and real dreaming means. Just read all the studies of people who have an inability to sleep because our minds have been crowded by the devices that we carry with us 24/7, robbing us of our inability to achieve those lucid states because of the calmness that we can seek to open those doors. We struggle to get there because our minds race with another reality, an artificial reality where we play modern warfare and force images and content into that construct that confuse and destroy the